Today is an historic day. It is a great honor for us to announce that we have reached an agreement on the Iranian nuclear issue. With courage, political will, mutual respect and leadership, we delivered on what the world was hoping for, a shared commitment to peace and to join hands in order to make our world safer. We have today agreed on the final text of this joint comprehensive plan of action. The E3, EU +3 and the Islamic Republic of Iran welcome this historic joint comprehensive plan of action, which will ensure that Iran's nuclear program will be exclusively peaceful and mark a fundamental shift in their approach to this issue. They anticipate that full implementation of this joint comprehensive plan of action will positively contribute to regional and international peace and security.
We have negotiated a deal that is good for the United States, it's good for Israel, it's good for world peace and security.
Smiles and laughter to mark a historic agreement, nearly 2 years in the making and ending more than 3 decades of hostility. The agreement reining in Iran's nuclear program comes after 18 long-winded days of meetings in Vienna, the final stretch of 20 months of negotiations. The West and Iran both immediately claimed victory.
This is the good deal that we have sought. Believe me, had we been willing to settle for a lesser deal, we would have finished this negotiation a long time ago.
Today could have been the end of hope on this issue, but now we are starting a new chapter of hope.
Here's the breakdown. The deal curtails Iran's nuclear program by cutting the number of centrifuges operating to make highly enriched uranium and limiting, but not eliminating, research on more advanced centrifuges capable of enriching uranium much faster. In theory, this extends the estimated minimum time needed for Iran to assemble a nuclear weapon to at least 1 year from the current 2 to 3 months. To help prevent cheating, the deal also provides for more intrusive inspections of the entire nuclear supply chain, even tracking uranium from the time it leaves the mine. The International Atomic Energy Agency, in charge of the inspections, signing an agreement with Iran today.
To be able to have a covert path, Iran would actually need far more than one covert facility. It would need an entire covert supply chain.
Still, the deal does not dismantle any of Iran's nuclear facilities, including the once secret underground military facility at Fordo. And it eventually lifts a UN arms embargo that had prevented Iran from acquiring intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the U.S. Fierce opposition to the deal was immediate.
What a stunning, historic mistake.
And the deal faces a challenge in Congress as well.
It's going to hand a dangerous regime billions of dollars in sanctions relief while paving the way for a nuclear Iran.
Secretary Kerry took his critics head on, touting the success so far of the interim agreement in freezing Iran's nuclear program.
Man, were we told by skeptics that we were making a mistake of a lifetime, that Iran would never comply, that this was a terrible agreement. But you know what? They were dead wrong.
Well, one of the toughest points that you were arguing well into the early morning hours was about the arms embargo.
Sure.
Now, Iran will have the ability to buy conventional weapons in as little as 5 years. How are you okay with walking away knowing Iran will be having more access to weapons?
We're not okay.
quickly?
The United States of America can always do other things. I mean, we can, people can decide that there's a rationale for re-upping after 5 years. But here's the bottom line. 7 nations were negotiating. 3 of the 7 nations were in favor of no embargo whatsoever. Let them do what they're doing now. 4 wanted to keep it. And so we kept it for the period of time that we could negotiate, understanding also that the Security Council resolution on which all of this is based actually contemplated that if Iran came to the table and negotiated, all the sanctions would be lifted.
But now Iran can buy missiles and import and export them in 8 years.
No, they have a missiles embargo for 8 years, and no matter what happens, the length and time of this deal is 10 years. So you have a differential of 2 years. But look, here's the bottom line, Margaret. Either you get Iran to come into an agreement where you limit their nuclear weapons, or they will go do everything they're going to do with missiles and have a nuclear weapon at the same time. Again, the critics do not answer the question of, so what do you do about their nuclear capacity? They already developed their nuclear capacity. When President Obama became president, they already had enrichment. They already had centrifuges. They already had the ability. They already had fissile material for a number of bombs.
How do you expect Iran's behavior to change?
I don't know. I can't tell you. All I
can
tell you is
that out.
They say that they will. They say there are things they're going to do. They say they're going to live up to it.
The leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, has thanked the country's nuclear negotiating team for their genuine and hard efforts. Ayatollah Khamenei made the remarks in a meeting with President Hassan Rouhani and his cabinet members. The leader also appreciated the cabinet for their efforts and wished them success. President Rouhani thanked the leader for supporting and guiding the government and the negotiating team through nuclear talks. Rouhani expressed hope that the conclusion of nuclear negotiations will pave the way to bring an end to pressure and accusations against Iran. While Iran and the P5+1 group of countries have concluded nuclear negotiations in Vienna, they issued a statement on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that they've agreed upon. Under the plan, Iran reaffirms that its nuclear program remains peaceful. In return, all nuclear-related sanctions against the country will be lifted. The outcome follows intensive talks between Iran and the P5+1.
Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif and EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini have announced the historic conclusion of intensive nuclear talks between Tehran and the P5+1. They've read the statement on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, known as the JCPOA, reached in Vienna on July 14th. Amongst other things, the text of the JCPOA states world powers recognize Iran's peaceful nuclear program and respect the country's nuclear rights. The United Nations will recognize Iran as a nuclear power. Iran will continue uranium enrichment as well as research and development on advanced centrifuges. Arak heavy water reactor will continue activities and will be modernized. An arms embargo against Iran will be lifted and replaced with some restrictions. All anti-Iran sanctions will be lifted.
Iran reaffirms that under no circumstances will Iran ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons.
The world is a much more dangerous place today than it was yesterday. The leading international powers have bet our collective future on a deal with the foremost sponsor of international terrorism. They've gambled that in 10 years' time, Iran's terrorist regime will change while removing any incentive for it to do so. In fact, the deal gives Iran every incentive not to change. In the coming decade, the deal will reward Iran, the terrorist regime in Tehran, with hundreds of billions of dollars. This cash bonanza will fuel Iran's terrorism worldwide, its aggression in the region, and its efforts to destroy Israel, which are ongoing. Amazingly, this bad deal does not require Iran to cease its aggressive behavior in any way. And just last Friday, that aggression was on display for all to see. While the negotiators were closing the deal in Vienna, Iran's supposedly moderate president chose to go to a rally in Tehran. And at this rally, a frenzied mob burned American and Israeli flags and chanted, "Death to America, death to Israel." Now, this didn't happen 4 years ago. It happened 4 days ago. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, said on March 21st that the deal does not limit Iran's aggression in any way. He said, "Negotiations with the United States on the nuclear issue and on nothing else." And 3 days ago, he made that clear again. The United States, he said, embodies global arrogance, and the battle against it will continue unabated even after the nuclear agreement is concluded. Here's what Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Iran's terrorist proxy Hezbollah, said about sanctions relief, which is a key component of the deal. He said, "A rich and strong Iran will be able to stand by its allies and friends in the region more than at any time in the past." Translation: Iran's support for terrorism and subversion will actually increase after the deal. In addition to filling Iran's terror war chest, this deal repeats the mistakes made with North Korea. There too, we were assured that inspections and verifications would prevent a rogue regime from developing nuclear weapons. And we all know how that ended. The bottom line of this very bad deal is exactly what Iran's President Rouhani said today. The international community is removing the sanctions, and Iran is keeping its nuclear program. By not dismantling Iran's nuclear program, in a decade this deal will give an unreformed, unrepentant, and far richer terrorist regime the capacity to produce many nuclear bombs, in fact, an entire nuclear arsenal with the means to deliver it. What a stunning, historic mistake. Israel is not bound by this deal with Iran, and Israel is not bound by this deal with Iran because Iran continues to seek our destruction. We will always defend ourselves.
President Hassan Rouhani said the nuclear negotiations prove that Iran is not seeking weapons of mass destruction. He hailed the conclusion of the nuclear talks as a win-win outcome, which was secured by the Iranian people's patience.
After 23 months of negotiations by the Islamic Republic of Iran with the 6 world powers, today we've managed to reach a new point. What mattered the most during this period was the steadfastness, patience and resistance shown by the courageous people of Iran.
U.S. President Barack Obama also hailed the achievement as a comprehensive and long-term deal with Iran, saying he will veto any congressional legislation that would threaten it.
I am confident that this deal will meet the national security interests of the United States and our allies. So I will veto any legislation that prevents the successful implementation of this deal. This deal meets every single one of the bottom lines that we established when we achieved a framework earlier this spring. Every pathway to a nuclear weapon is cut off.
The deal would not shut down a single nuclear facility in Iran, would not destroy a single centrifuge in Iran, and will not stop R&D on Iran's advanced centrifuges. On the contrary, The deal would legitimize Iran's illegal nuclear program. It would leave Iran with a vast nuclear infrastructure. A vast nuclear infrastructure remains in place. The deal would lift sanctions almost immediately, and this at the very time that Iran is stepping up its aggression and terror in the region and beyond the region. In a few years, the deal would remove the restrictions on Iran's nuclear program, enabling Iran to have a massive enrichment capacity that it could use to produce many nuclear bombs within a matter of months. Such a deal does not block Iran's path to the bomb. Such a deal paves Iran's path to the bomb. And it might very well spark a nuclear arms race throughout the Middle East, and it would greatly increase the risks of terrible war. The survival of Israel is non-negotiable. Israel will not accept an agreement which allows a country that vows to annihilate us to develop nuclear weapons, period. In addition, Israel demands that any final agreement with Iran will include a clear and unambiguous Iranian commitment of Israel's right to exist.